All right, just watched the debates. Wanted to get my thoughts out there before they all disappear. So the format was much better because in the beginning, they had every candidate spend a minute introducing themselves. That was so stupid not to have that during the first debate where they just started asking questions and the American people doesn't even know. We don't even know who these people are, and you're immediately asking them questions. Not to have that introduction was dumb. So they did it right this time. So that was good. And then after that, it just seemed like it was better run. The moderators did a good job keeping people in check, although it does seem there was a lot of favoritism towards Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. It seems like they were given a chance to talk, while certain other people, as soon as they said three words, okay, let's go to this other person. Maybe that's just my perception, but that seems to be what happened. So this debate was Steve Bullock, Pete Buttigieg, Delaney, Hickenlooper, Klobuchar, O'Rourke, Ryan, Sanders, Warren, and Williamson. Williamson is definitely different than the other candidate. She has a lot of heart. She has a lot of good points. And on reparations, she actually put out a dollar amount. So she's not one of these candidates who says, yeah, I believe in reparations and we should put a committee on that. Yeah, we'll put a committee together. She comes up, yep, 200 to $500 billion, a number. So there it is. And that's to obviously for the reparations mistakes that have passed, this dollar amount to try to ease that anger that still persists. Obviously, apparently, according to a survey, 73% of blacks believe in this reparations, although not all blacks are going to get reparations. Obama wouldn't be eligible. His father was Kenya, ancestors from Kenya. He's not a descendant of slaves. So figuring this out would leave people behind, and that's kind of the sticky issue. But maybe that's what you need a commission for, but at least Williamson put out a number. Big topic to begin, healthcare, and there was a lot of back and forth between John Delaney, he's the bald guy who's younger than Bernie Sanders. John Delaney kind of taking out Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. He hit him pretty good, saying, hey, look, the socialism, getting rid of all private health care is just a bad idea. It's a disaster. And I believe in Medicare for all, but also choice, where all the people working and the 180 million people getting their health care through work can keep that. And he made some good points for it. Bernie Sanders was on his game. He had a good night. He made good points for not having the private sector. I think something Bernie Sanders was strong on is Delaney brought up apparently he's gone to hospitals and said, if you were paid nothing but Medicare rates, would you be able to stay in business? Apparently a lot of hospitals said no, but Bernie Sanders said, hey, look, they're paying so much money in administrative costs and all this paperwork. You get rid of that cost, and now they'll be able to afford getting those Medicare rates. I think Delaney's strongest point was people on Medicaid, people receiving government health care, they're using private sector plans as a supplement to what they're getting. So they're still using that public sector insurance, but still have a component that's private sector where you can bring more money into the system and then have that capitalism, that innovation, that competition portion as well. But very good debate between the two. But once again, I think Delaney a couple times kind of hit Sanders and Warren pretty hard as being too far on the left and being the socialists. Immigration came up, of course. They were pretty weak on immigration. The fact that they were asked a question during the last debate, who thinks anybody here illegally should be arrested just for being here without paperwork, and having that raise of hands. Obviously, that's a very complicated issue. And just to resort people holding up their hands to answer that question. I mean, on one hand, you want people that are here illegally to be able to go to the police and report crimes if they're being victimized without threat of being deported. But at the same time, you don't want to tell everybody of every country of Earth, around the globe that, yeah, if you just get here illegally, then you're not going to get arrested. And CNN, to their credit, did bring up the point, telling people that it's not going to be illegal, that they're going to get free health care, that they're going to get free college. We have 100,000 people coming a month, and we have a catastrophe. What you're doing, you're going to have 1 million people at the border each month. So aren't you encouraging a greater disaster than we already have? And there weren't really any good answers to that. So I think immigration, illegal immigration, is something the Democrats are weak on. It seems that their go-to thing is to say, oh, Trump's a racist and Trump's anti-immigration, but we accept about 1 million legal immigrants a year. And Trump is addressing illegal immigration, not legal immigration. So I think the Democrats have to do some work on that. Most of the American people want strong borders. And the Democrats were saying, oh, yeah, we need to be a country of law. We need strong borders. But then they're coming up with, oh, we got to fix countries in South America so they don't come here, which completely ignores the fact that so many are lured here by all the billions of dollars that are in the industry, that are in the human trafficking industry to bring them here. Families just getting suckered into, hey, give us your life savings. We'll get you to America, where it's just candy canes and rainbows. And a lot of them wind up in the ghettos of Los Angeles and these tent cities, living a very horrible life. So none of that was addressed. It was like somehow we're supposed to fix all these cities in South America. So once again, pretty weak. College tuition, should it be free? So that's Bernie Sanders' plan, but just saying it'll be free doesn't address all the underlying issues with college, getting down the cost. And then obviously where's all that money going to come from? And of course, he's also for forgiving all student debt and just making a bunch of promises that it doesn't seem like are realistic. And then once again, just saying it's free doesn't address all those underlying issues. So some back and forth on that. Tariffs came back and China came back, and they all seem to agree that China is stealing our intellectual property. They're not dealing in fair trade. The government is subsidizing their companies to sell their product for cheap to put our companies out of business, and that's been going on for decades. So everybody seems to agree that China has really taken advantage of us and really has hurt our companies and our workers. But then they say, oh, tariffs are wrong. Okay, so what's your plan? If not tariffs, then what? You're just going to ask China really nicely to play by the rules? So nobody had an alternative to making them comply to tariffs, which to me was pretty weak. Racism and reparations. So I talked about Williamson, who actually had a number. So Beto O'Rourke came out for reparations. As far as racism, one of the commentators for CNN was Don Lemon, who's not professional. He's not an objective journalist. He just positions things to say, hey, look, Trump is a racist. So what are you going to do about the people that are okay with his racism, but just want his policies and let his racism and his bigotry slide? I mean, that's the way he's kind of positioning it. And I think the problem with the Democrats, if you keep saying racism, the word starts losing meaning. And I think a lot of the American people are just tired of hearing racism. I mean, you can say what Trump said 2.5 years ago, something like that, where he said most illegal immigrants from Mexico were murderers and rapists, most of them, which obviously was a ridiculous statement. And I think he's pulled back from saying that. And you can say, yeah, that's racist, but criticizing a representative of a Baltimore district who's been a complete failure, to say that's racist when he goes after everybody, any opponent of Trump, he goes after, whether they're white or not, it doesn't matter. So to try to say that it's racism if the people he's going after aren't white, to me seems like a ridiculous argument. Anyway, so that came up. Overall, Steve Bullock, Buttigieg, not really memorable. Hickenlooper, Amy Klobuchar, I think, was weak. Apparently, in the beginning, she talked about politicians that just promise everything. And right after Bernie Sanders talked about free college and forgiving all college debt, she's asked about that again. Well, what about these politicians that bring up that they're just going to give everybody away free and make all these promises? So this was a softball that she could have hit out of the park, saying, "Yeah, these aren't realistic, and we need to be truthful for the American people." Instead, she goes off on some tangent against Trump, completely missed her opportunity. Beto O'Rourke wasn't as much of a disaster as the first time when he tried to speak Spanish and apparently butchered it. But I mean, he's such a weak candidate. He has no vision. He has no policies. I just think he's extremely weak. Tim Ryan just seemed kind of nervous. I want to say didn't seem to be really smooth. Bernie Sanders was strong. Elizabeth Warren, I think, was weakened by John Delaney's attacks, and she looked kind of flustered, and she just wanted to keep speaking. And the commentators were like, "Look, it's been a minute. You got to play by the rules." And she seemed to get frustrated with that. So I don't think it was really strong. Marianne Williamson, I think, was interesting. She's very interesting, very different from the others. Oh, Elizabeth Warren said that the United States of America should sign some agreement that we would never do a nuclear preliminary strike ever. So even if we had the intelligence that a rogue nation was about to use a nuclear device on us, unless we struck, and we knew this, we would have to wait for us to be attacked first before we would strike. I mean, that to me just sounds like a ridiculous thing to promise. And to somebody's credit, I don't know who it was, said, I would not take that off the table. I just thought that was a completely naive statement to go. Climate change was talked about a lot. We got to do something. And there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of argument. Once again, big difference between John Delaney and a lot of back and forth between him and Sanders and Warren. The Green New Deal, which is really anti-capitalism. It really just tears down our entire economy to rebuild it into this government promises, jobs, and this just total socialism thing. Not once was nuclear power mentioned. Not once. Not once was plant-based product, meatless burgers mentioned. Now, somebody, I think it was Hickenlooper, did bring up the agriculture issue, saying, hey, we got to address this. And somebody brought up technology where these machines that take carbon out of the air. So at least it was mentioned, but I mean, that has to be core in this issue. We have to talk about nuclear energy. We have to talk about plant-based products. We have to talk about technology that can pull carbon from the air. We have to talk about innovation, not this Green New Deal, which is really just anti-capitalism. When you read it, it says income inequality. That's because of climate change. Now, obviously, that's not because of climate change. They're talking about capitalism. They brought forth an anti-capitalism bill where they just changed the word from capitalism to climate change. I mean, seriously, if you haven't read the bill, Google it. It's out there on PDF. It's not that long. Read it. No mention of innovation. No mention of nuclear power, plant-based products, machines that take carbon out of the air. Nothing like that. Just we have to tear down our entire way of life. Anyway, overall, I don't know if anybody stood out. Bernie Sanders seemed to get the most applause, but he was hit pretty hard on his socialist policies and completely getting rid of the healthcare private sector. So I guess we'll just wait to see what the polls come out with on who people really think won. Williamson did well. Sanders did well. Beto O'Rourke, I hate to say it, did okay, and I hate to say it because I really dislike the guy. Amy Klobuchar, I thought was very weak, pretty much invisible. Delaney had a pretty good night. Buttigieg, I don't think he's going to be really memorable. And I think we are going to see these candidates start to thin out for the September debates. Anyway, looking forward tomorrow, where we're going to have Andrew Yang. That's my favorite guy running. Tulsi Gabbard, who's very strong on free speech, American values. I'm a fan from her. And of course, that's going to have Biden and Harris, who went after it last time. And I expect they're going to be going after each other again. So that's going to be interesting. And we'll see what happens. This is Jim Wall. Thanks for watching. Until next time.